This panel is turning obstacles into opportunities and taking the transformation journey one step at a time. So we've talked about some of the reasons why and a little bit of the experience part. Now it's about how do we actually execute on those types of things. So I'd like to take a minute and introduce our panel. You'll do a quick introduction of each person here. We'll start with Samantha. And Samantha and I go way back. So this is a funny story, but Samantha and I go way back to when Benekiva first launched, and we first met back in 2018, and she was at IT Group, I believe.
IT Group.
IT Group, yeah. And she had come out with this top 5 life and annuity claims systems report, and then she heard about Benekiva. I don't know if it was...
I think you came like right after that.
Yeah.
You made your announcement, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, did I forget you?"
So she quickly learned about Benekiva, and we've been friends and colleagues ever since. So go ahead and introduce yourself.
So I'm Samantha Chow. I am I work for Capgemini. I'm the market leader for life annuities and benefits on a global scale. I was analyst for 5 years. Worked core systems. Been in the industry for about 25 years.
Nice. Lloyd?
Hi there, I'm Lloyd Campbell-Gibson. I look after the life and health claims for Swiss Re for the Americas region, so that's Canada, US, and Latin America. I've been in the industry also almost 30 years now. I'm an actuary by background, so it's strange to find myself in claims, but it really just shows how claims is transforming. The interest in the amount of data we have, the analytics we can do with claims, the importance it is to the profitability of the company just drew me to that area of the business. And I've been there 6 years, and I've been with Swiss Re, I think 13 years, and then in the direct market for the rest of the time.
Awesome.
Good to be here.
Bobby?
Bobby Shrivastava, co-founder, COO of Benekiva. And I would say prior to Benekiva, I've been in technology most of my career. I've worked for Pepsi, a division of AIG, and started Benekiva with Brent and Sovan back in 2016. But prior to that, I had 2 other tech startups. So been in the startup space as well as in the corporate space. And really, when we talk about this topic, it's so important to bridge the execution. So how do you take the transformation, the strategies, and turn it into action? And that's the role that I play at Benekiva from a product customer care delivery side of the world, and happy to be part of this panel.
Yeah, that's awesome. So it's interesting you mentioned that, because when we first came out, we spent a lot of time and effort on the delivery side of the organization. We didn't even build the sales side of the organization until this year. So up until this year, we hadn't even had a sales team because we had learned as part of that research that one of the things that carriers kept running into was these vendors would come in and promise the world and deliver portions of it. And so we decided that we did not want to be that. We wanted to be able to deliver on the promise that this platform can do what we say it can do. So Bobby, we'll start off with you. You just mentioned you spent much of your career in technology products, PepsiCo, United Guarantee, and those types of carriers or those types of industries on the technology side. You've been a vendor and you've also been a buyer. So tell us a little bit about how would you describe the process by which you work with carriers to run them through these claims transformation and optimization processes?
Now, so we often talk about at Benekiva crawl, walk, run. And yes, those phrases get thrown around our industry quite often, but we really want to figure out how we could do agile deployment. So when, the whole theme of this summit has come to be, let's get started, it's really about really understanding where the carriers are at, what technology landscape that they're currently in, and what value can Benekiva provide day one. And how could we do that in the least friction as possible when you're working with IT, when you're working with business leaders, so that you don't become a burden on them. because they're going to have priorities that, claims may be an objective, but they may have other priorities that are above. So if you could be that lean and mean machine where we're only pulling in needed resources and we're doing it in an agile way, that's how we're working with organizations. And I say that from my previous expertise, experience when, we have done on when I was the buyer, right? And when my team had to go through several years of ERP implementation, found out they're gonna replace it again. And I'm like, you guys are crazy. So when you spend a financial system up and you're looking at, the major vendors, those implementations are hard. And there's scars that leave to your team. And then when you go around and say, hey, by the way, in 18 months, you have to now plan for an upgrade. How many of you guys have faced that? So you're in this never-ending upgrade cycle. So in order to prove out agile delivery and how do we do this fast deployment, we made sure that our architecture and foundations were done in such a way that we're not that burden. Because I did not want to be that burden for my partners.
That's interesting. So Lloyd, given your experience in reinsurance, how are you working with carriers you partner with to help them approach their claims optimization and transformation?
Yeah, thanks. So as a reinsurer, I guess we're in a very different space. We're not going out there to look for issues. We're not going out there to sell systems. We're not going out there to transform companies. But what we do, and what we are able to see, is that we go out and we are looking at a lot of companies, we're reinsuring a lot of companies, and it's very easy for us to compare companies. So almost just by nature of our job, we can see when things are working well, and we can contrast and compare that to where things aren't working well. So as part of that process, we can see as soon as you have companies that have a lot of different systems, that have a lot of different handovers, they have a lot of different manual processes, that increases the risk for us. And risk is the business we are in, and we want to see the risk reduced. So we like to talk to companies about how do you go about reducing the risk that you're not getting the claims process right. And there are various things that we talk about there. And I mean, the first one, and it seems like baby steps, but just starting on some sort of digitization journey is very, very important. Without digitized data, you cannot do the analytics you need. You cannot ever hope to get some sort of straight-through processing and automation. So getting just that first stage towards getting people to think about digitization of their data, and that helps a long way. Then I think we also encourage carriers to just speak to the people that do the job. Find out what their pain points are, have a conversation with even your employees, obviously, but even the beneficiaries themselves. We've heard it before, some people have been saying it up here. Go through that journey and just see where those pain points are. And just start small. Start with the biggest pain points, and then you're getting that journey going. So for us, it's really just having those conversations. We see huge differences between companies, so everyone's in a different space, and you can't expect everyone to go from from nothing to transformational claims, but just getting that small baby steps really makes a big difference to the risk management, and that's what we're hoping to see. Obviously, it would be great to see companies adopt transformational claims systems that like Benekiva, but we know that everyone's in a different space, and that's going to take some time. So we're just going on that journey with them and seeing where we can reduce risk one step at a time.
That is interesting. The compare and contrast is a huge thing, because I think I alluded to it earlier that every single carrier we talk to, they say, well, we're different. And when you look at it from an overall perspective, how different are you really? Because there's been times where people have left one organization and go to the other organization, and they reach out to us and say, oh my gosh, we have the same problems over here that we had over there. Yeah, because you're not that different. So that's interesting, that perspective. So Samantha, you worked in technology and product development side for life and annuity side of the insurance business for your career. What is your experience on the same question?
Yeah, so I feel like many carriers have really kind of failed at doing a lot of what Lloyd just said, and that's, not talking to the right people, not comparing the right pieces of technology, not looking within their systems to identify where there's opportunity. We've transformed or gained new technology just to do that without actually sitting down to look at the process, to understand what the pain points are, where the bottlenecks are, where are the discomforts, what are those things that are causing more risk. Again, going back to exactly what Lloyd said. So, it's been a weak point, I think, for most carriers for some time that they, technology is an enabler. Yes, you could have Benekiva. Benekiva can come in and have the best claim system you could ever have. But if the process internally, the lack of change management doesn't exist, you're not talking to underwriting, you're not talking to policy, you're not talking to your actuaries to make sure that all those processes, the rules, the data is all telling you the right things and driving the right process, you're not going to be successful. That's where most of these carriers have fallen down. The most successful ones bring in somebody, they bring in a partner. What does my claims process need to look like? Where should I be shaving off some manual process, using more data, automating in order to create the right customer experience, and kind of embedding the customer, in this case, the beneficiary, into that process, but also, the organization and where you're trying to be as an organization.
Great. So Lloyd, we've talked about the importance of claims analytics. We've had multiple conversations on this, and customer-first claims operations. In your experience, how do you achieve that in your organization? How do you partner with carriers to adopt those strategies?
Yeah, thanks. So and I'll speak about my organization first, because as a reinsurer, we're kind of in a different space. We don't get to see that end customer experience as much, but analytics is a big part of what we think that we can bring to the carriers. And for us, we spent a lot of time internally understanding our data, because analytics itself is only as useful as the data that you get. I spoke about digitization, that's the obvious first step. But even if you've got a lot of data and you've got a lot of analytics capability, explaining what you're analyzing is not as simple as it sounds. So at Swiss Re, we spend a lot of time designing something called a single source of truth. So getting all our systems to speak to each other through one particular portal. And then we've taken that portal and really given it to everyone in the organization almost. So really democratize that data. Because then you spend very little time reconciling what one person says in one area of the organization to another person, because they've got different sources of data. So that's helped a lot. And you've also got a lot of people that are working on that data if you make it available to everyone. So then the analytics becomes something that lots of people are thinking about, lots of people are doing in their day-to-day business, and the quality of that analytics is just really significantly improved once you get it out there to more and more people. So when we speak to carriers, we like to talk to them about just how important that analytics is. And when it comes to the customer first part, I think this has been spoken about so many times in this conference. The people they know how important customers are, but they don't always think of the beneficiary as a customer. So to the extent that we go and speak to a lot of carriers to say, the beneficiary is a customer, and that can make a significant difference to how your business operates. You can get new customers through that process. So putting the customer first in the claims area can be significantly beneficial to yourselves. And we've done a lot of research ourselves on this, and things like that what's important to a customer at a claims time is something like empathy, and then so you would think to yourself, how does empathy come through in an automated system? Well, the kind of language you use, how easy someone feels that process is to go through, that can all be very empathetic to someone. Things like signposting is important to people when they're going through a process that they don't often go through. I mean, we don't We hope we never have to claim, but when we do, it's something that's pretty rare. So telling people where they are in this process is very, very important to the whole customer-first journey, making them feel like we're with them on this journey. We know that we can show them where they are. And also things like just social influence. What one person's claimed experience was with your company can influence what another person thinks is going to happen, and therefore making sure that that claims experience is good will have knock-on benefits to other parts of your business as people talk about what they went through.
It's great. So Samantha, you're helping carriers at various levels with their transformation efforts. What are some important considerations that carriers should look at as they go into the execution phase of these processes?
Well, I think I mentioned some of it already up front, right? Change management has to be embedded. If not, then, the changes you make, you're going to fall back on, right? You're going to fall back on bad behaviors. But more importantly, part of change management is getting buy-in. It's talking to the right people. It's bringing in, I think I was a session or two earlier, was like middle management. Don't forget to talk about them. Don't forget to talk to those people on the floor, those claims reps that are doing the job. They have the face-to-face voice with your customer, the beneficiary. So, learning from them and kind of utilizing what they say, what they see, driving that forward. So the other part of that is, you really do honestly need an unbiased party. It's okay to have, a strategy team or an innovation team or your Six Sigma team that comes through and evaluates process and such. But most times I've experienced it from both sides of the world. New York Life, Aflac, being, an advisor or consultant. You don't bring in the right outside source. You're going to be biased in your decisions. You're going to, it's like, your child. Everybody thinks the baby is so cute. Yeah, no, not so really. Babies can be not so cute. But to get that outside influence makes a huge difference, right? It's unbiased. And they also bring a perspective that you may not consider or think about. So having that partner in the evaluation process, having that partner that's going to come in and help you evaluate the right piece of technology or the technology internally to make sure that you're even set up to a point you could take on something as modern as Benekiva, without hurting yourself. And making sure that you're going to get the most value out of it with a more modern system. And then, so, SI partners are also key. Trying to do some of this stuff on your own it's recipe for disaster. So partners, unbiased, evaluating things from the inside out and making the right decisions is kind of the key.
Yeah, I think I couldn't agree more, and I think Nick spoke on it a little earlier at one of the other sessions where, leveraging those partners, outside partners, to help you accomplish your goals. And, I give this story quite often on our sales team that, having that outsider perspective is huge. And I give this story where, imagine with me, you're a client and you're walking into an insurance carrier, and you see the picture on the wall, this huge picture, and it's tilted slightly, right? An outsider will pick that tilted picture out night and day. It just looks odd to them. But the employees that walk into that organization every single day, day in and day out, they don't even notice the picture is tilted. Because that's their world. They're just so in-depth into that
or
business.
They don't reach up and fix it.
Yeah.
Because they're afraid to. That somebody did that for a particular reason and they're afraid to change it.
Yeah. So I think it's a valid point. So Bobby, you discussed earlier your approach you've worked with carriers. Share your thoughts on the importance of being agile in this overall process.
Yeah, I talk a lot about agile deployment, agile delivery. And if you really want to do that crawl, walk, run approach, you have to be agile in how you approach it. And it doesn't mean like, from an internal team, we're agile, meaning we follow Scrum. Scrum-Bon is our dev methodology. But a carrier may not be able to adapt. They may still be, in their world of waterfall, or I'm going to do step A, step B, step C. So how do you adopt to those different variances and still be agile? And that's critical, because how do you communicate? In those scenarios, you have to over-communicate. You have to make sure that they're ready while you're still being agile, maybe showcasing features instead of having them incorporating them into the testing. They want to test later, sure, but you're going to get ready. You're going to be as agile as possible so that they can, as soon as they can consume it, they're able to really look at it and quickly go through their cycle.
Yeah, that crawl, walk, run is as simple as it sounds. It is still a process, right? And it's that whole mentality of, you eat the elephant one bite at a time. You don't eat the whole elephant. So break that thing up into multiple, smaller projects to help you accomplish your goal. So,
and I would say agile done right is very difficult because it's a disciplined approach. It takes a lot of discipline to go through these cycles, to go through that rigor. And crawl, walk, run sounds really amazing, but done when we do it, you can see really good benefits. But to get started, theme of this summit is becoming get started, you have to take one single point and how do we quickly add value?
Yeah, I agree. So this is a question for all. As self-proclaimed data enthusiasts, when you're faced with road mapping, complex claims, or digitization plans, which in most cases includes multiple policy admin systems, third-party systems, old coding languages, manual processes, how do you analyze the short-term operational wins against long-term transformational approaches? And I think, Bobby, this kind of stems to get those quick wins and stack up those wins over time.
Yeah, so I can go first. And I believe it's, in order to outweigh when you're balancing short-term pressures with long-term strategy, you have to look at from a lens of business outcomes. Like, what are the outcomes I want to achieve? And really try to paint, if you've got a strategy, and I often tell carriers, please don't spend 2-3 years on your strategy. Just be very nimble. Samantha, you probably experienced this. Be nimble with that. But when you have a roadmap, right? However you come up with that roadmap, having each one of those areas and outcomes of what I want to achieve in the organization and the how is your partner network. And that partner network is internal and external, right? So as an operations department, right, my internal partners are IT, right, as an example. And my external partners could be, like an EXL or Capgemini as an example. Reinsurance is a partner. So when we look at those business outcomes and how I can activate that, it becomes how we can take those short-term and long-term and really marry that up into a really nice roadmap that's filled with business outcomes that are being executed. And then you learn a lot, because you are going to pivot. That strategy doesn't live up 100% according to plan.
Yeah, it's interesting. We've been in lots of roadmap conversations, and the roadmap yesterday isn't the roadmap tomorrow. So, Lloyd, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I guess I sit here in a slightly different position in that I don't roll out systems with people. So, but I can say that those small operational wins that you talk about, those sort of small steps, that's the part of changing people's mindset and the culture to start thinking differently about things. Not only that, it also provides the headspace for people just to get out of those day-to-day little tasks that take up all their time and start thinking bigger. So that, as people start freeing up time to think about other things or spend time on the important parts of claims, then I think things start to move in the way that you want the culture to move, and then people start asking for more and they start getting hungry for even more change. I think when it comes to transformational stuff, I think that there can be some downside to just throwing in a huge transformational change, even if people have bought into it a little bit, because we've heard this before, claims is quite a human-centered activity, and you've got to be careful that you keep those very important people in that loop. And if you just suddenly throw something at someone and it becomes this black box, and you start finding it difficult for people to explain what the decision was, and you start losing that kind of human element to it, it can also backfire a little bit. So there's got to be a transformational change, but it's got to include the people, the experts, as I think we've all mentioned. They've got to be part of the process all along, and they've got to choose parts of that journey where they make the most difference, because when that all works together, then it's going to be a really unbeatable process, I think.
Yeah, then I completely agree. And then, back to the point about, keeping the operations, the people, the boots on the ground actually doing this work looped into the process is very important, because we can almost become that voice for those individuals, right? When you're going through a big transformation effort and all of a sudden time is starting to crunch, money is an issue, these things, the first thing they look at is that project, okay, what pieces can we cut out? And without talking to the operations folks and understanding, okay, if you cut out that small piece, you're gonna create this extra work for me down the road. So having that real collaborative process, I think is key to the crawl, walk, run approach. So Samantha, what do you?
Yeah, and I'm going to add and layer into that. So a lot of times when you go through transformation within the carrier, you go through transformation within your silo, within claims. But how many times does your claim representative have to reach out to underwriting to say, what did you do here? Why did you do that? This is within the contestability period. I'm not sure I understand where you went with that decision. I think, there's no connectivity. And that's the biggest lacking in that first series of evaluations when they go in to do claims. They don't think about interacting with underwriting to understand, like, hey, you want a quick win? Hello, give me access to their system. And I'm done. I don't have to, you just saved me an entire day of going through and having to wait for them to email me, PDF documents outside of their system so that I can evaluate it and upload it into my system. It's the little things like that when you really start to break down the silos and talk across the different operational areas, including, your service reps, your telephone service reps. It's just, that's where you're going to get your immediate. That's your low-hanging fruit. After that, then you're feeling a little reprieve. You have a little time. You're feeling a little extra revenue through operational expenses being saved that you can start dumping into these bigger projects. And so you're continuously gaining while you're transforming, and you're doing it in a way that it's kind of ground from the inside out rather than the outside in.
Yeah, that's interesting. Bobby, you had a point?
Yeah, what Samantha shared triggered, like in the claim side, oftentimes, we're talking about efficiency, but that efficiency can really mean saving expenses or saving dollars that are going out that don't need to be going out, such as death claim interest. If I'd had a seamless process, perhaps I'm under my 30-day ROP date, right? As an example. The other piece is, Brent and I, in one of our earlier carriers, we found out that like $4.4 million were going out because of incorrect calculations. And those are, once again, when you give a check to a Benny, you can't go back and say, oh, by the way, I gave you $500 less, because I forgot that we had this rider and we had to deduct it, and we didn't have to add that. So those are the nuances that, like when we think about process efficiency, yes, and the unintended consequences and true expense savings that we can really yield.
Can I add one more thing?
Yeah.
Because it goes back to what Lloyd said, and this is, what did you call it? Your data you can bring all your data together. Your single source of truth. That is key to success and automation and the mistakes. I think it was Gartner like 2 years ago said that, that 360 view, that single source of truth is, is going to die by its wayside, just because it's challenging. Swiss Re can do it. I challenge that you can all do it if you know the right people to talk to. And that's going to save you so much just by having all the right data in the right spots, to go through the right calculations, to trigger the right rules, to make sure you don't forget that rider. So,
the short-term versus long-term conversation, right? So I'm having I would say a debate with a partner of mine, because, when you look at the short-term cost of doing conversion right, making sure that when they go to, when we do agile deliveries, we're looking at the full scope and not not picking, okay, I'm gonna just do this because I have this limited budget. Let's really think about it from long-term perspective. So the short-term cost, which is really nothing, right, at the grand scheme of things, but the long-term impact. And I think that's where, when carriers and partners really look at the metrics and look at some of the substance metrics, and that claim analytics is a great portion of that. I think you can see that, okay, yes, it may cost a little bit more to do this piece of conversion, but I don't have to add 20 more people to support this business because I did this right. I invested time earlier than have the pain of not doing it later.
Yeah, I think you kind of fall back to that's the way we did it in the past, so we can just continue to do it that way. And that's not transformation. That's that's going back to your old ways. And part of transformation is not going back to your old ways. Part of your transformation is, identifying those things that have to change and make the investment and make those changes. And let's face it, budgets are just that, budgets. There's always a variance in budgets. There's plus or minus variances in budgets. So, to me, when someone says, well, we can't do this piece because it's going to cost a little bit more over budget, I get that. But on the flip side of that, every carrier I speak to, when they talk about budgets, whatever Benekiva tells them it's going to be, they're going to double it internally anyway. That's just the way they've done business in the past. So they're just so used to doing that. And then, when we deliver and we're way under that budget, it's almost like, wait a minute, what's wrong? What's going on here? So, all right. So, question for all. As carrier take important steps towards their claims transformation journey, what's one piece of advice or lessons from experience you would like to share?
I think I've said it numerous times. You need a partner. You can't don't try and do it on your own. Lean on somebody, an outside source, whoever that may be, to come in, evaluate, work with you. Make sure you're aligning to your corporate strategy. Help you figure out who you want to be when you grow up. Who do you want to be to your beneficiary? Don't do it alone. It won't necessarily fail, but it won't be as successful as you hope it will. It won't be as transformational.
Yeah. What about you?
Well, Samantha made mine easy because that was one of my points. I had three. I think the one definitely, look for help, because not only with the process itself, but the business case. Because I think someone like a reinsurer, who's an independent party per se, can help you put the business case to your management to say, we've looked at this at your claim process, and it's way behind what the market is doing, and it's costing you money, and there's a lot of extra risk. So we can help add some substance behind that business case. I think the other thing was the culture of the claims organization, or the organization in general, making people be a part of transformation, thinking differently, making people feel uncomfortable if things are the same year on year on year. You must feel like you must be moving backwards if it's always the same. So that whole cultural shift. Yeah, and I think maybe I'll stop there in the ordinary time.
Yeah, to piggyback off what Lloyd and Samantha shared, when you involve your team, especially operations, I'm very pro operations for a reason, because if you don't do operations right, you're gonna fail. So operations is like the keeping the lights on, and the more you involve them in your process, in your strategy, in the future projects, and asking them and having them part of your decision-making process, you're gonna win. You're gonna win tenfold. The second piece is to really follow that crawl, walk, run approach and be agile in your delivery. And then the third piece is just start.
Yeah, I think that's been one of the themes today, which was an unintended theme for this today.
I was gonna say that too, is an unintended consequence of this.
Is, just take that step. And there's that old picture, I think we've all seen it, where, it's this huge staircase, and it talks about, don't look at the huge staircase, look at the first step. Take that first step, and then the next step, and the next step. Pretty soon you'll look back and you've gone up the staircase. So I think that's a very important message for all parties. And with respect to just starting, again, to get true value, you don't have to do a multi-year, multi-million-dollar project to prove that theory out. You could do, a lot of times, you could probably do some of these things and bring extreme value to your organization and not even have to go up the chain from a budget perspective. So I think it's about, looking at those types of scenarios and saying, how can we, elevate and get up the stairs faster by doing some of these processes sooner rather than later. I think Nick or Steve on one of the other things, please start now. I mean, this now. It's not tomorrow, it's not next week, it's now.
And Brent, to that point, also surrounding yourself with good people. We've always talked about that as a life principle, but as a profession, as an organization, when you surround yourself with good partners, that could really help move the needle. Absolutely.
So with that, I appreciate your time today. This was fun. Good to see you all. And some of us, we haven't met in person until today, so that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Glad to be here.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everybody.